It is the 17th of March 1989, and onlookers and first responders are picking over the rubble of a collapsed building. As the dust and debris settle, the remains shock locals, as the building that once stood here was somewhat of a local landmark. The site is making a passing resemblance of the aftermath of a battle, like the kickbacks to the indiscriminate destruction of the Second World War. Ironically, the building had survived World War II and World War I and the best part of a millennium before that of various sackings, invasions and sieges. What has collapsed is a medieval structure, standing tall through some of the most turbulent times in European history. The collapse today is in Pavia, Italy, and the town has lost one of its many medieval skyscrapers. Welcome to Plainly Difficult, and in this episode we'll be diving into the Pavia Civic Tower collapse. This video wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for my Patreon, YouTube and Ko-fi members. If you want early access to the channel's videos, then you can from just £1 per month. As always, the links will be in the pinned comment below. The City of 100 Towers. This is the city of Pavia, and it has a long history, all the way back to the Roman Empire and likely before. But under Roman rule, the city was named as Ticinum, operated as a key military hub in what we now know as northern Italy. Don't worry, I'm no Simon Schwarmer, so the video won't be a deep dive into the city's history. As such, I'll just fast forward through to the 11th century, but before I do have to make some honourable mentions to some of its highlights. Well, first of all, the name would change from Ticinum to Pavia. Pretty understandable as it goes, when the Diocese of Pavia was established in the late 300s. Yet pretty standard again for Catholic influence of the country. However, Attila the Hun sacked the city in 452, and it was again sacked in 475, albeit by different forces. Then sieged at least 3 times, once by Charlemagne no less. Wild history aside, the 11th century would bring around the beginnings of the tower, roughly around the same time Harold got the old Norman contact lens. Although starting around 1060, it would be built over the best part of a half a millennium, with height being added with each stage, building up the structure. Of course, in between each edition, the city was attacked a few times, and sacked and sieged. It was finally completed in 1583 with the addition of a granite block belfry for the cathedral next door. So how was it built? Well, it probably wouldn't surprise you that much that there aren't any solid plans from when it was originally constructed. A number of case studies into the building have given us an insight into its structure, however. Its makeup is described in stability of ancient masonry towers, moisture diffusion, carbonation and size effect by Daniel Ferris et al. Multiple leaf walls consist of 2 external layers, claddings, of good coarse masonry 150 to 250 mm thick, filled up by 1 to 4 metres of particular ancient concrete consisting of lime mortar, river gravels and recycled bricks. Ancient lime concrete is different from modern Portland cement concrete. Interestingly, the brickwork around the outside was thought to have dated back to the Roman period of the city, making them the best part of a millennium old at the time they were installed, and likely had been used in buildings several times before. The infill within the walls, mixed in with the concrete, was riverbed stones as well as other pilfered material. Thus, it in places wasn't a complete solid unit. During the building's life, an internal staircase was added, the space for which was excavated from the walls, making it significantly narrower around the perimeter as it rose to the belfry. The rectangular base tower had a total height of 72 metres, or 236 feet, and so it would stand surviving through years of invasions and sackings. Between 1714 and 1814, the city changed ownership 5 bloody times, to the French, Austrian, Spanish, and eventually one of the precursor states to the modern-day Italy that we know today. Plus, it went through 2 world wars. It's a wonder how it survived for so long. So surely by the late 20th century, its future was pretty much given, right? The disaster. It is the morning of Friday the 17th of March 1989, and along the Piazza del Duomo, all seems normal. Customers come and go at a nearby newspaper kiosk, as the 25-storey cathedral bell tower looms over, piercing the blue sky. Just before 9 AM, passers-by noticed bricks falling from the tower, crashing down into the street. Within seconds, more masonry was crashing across the piazza, followed by an entire elongation of the tower collapsed into the open space in front of the cathedral. Some debris peppered the buildings around it. The newspaper kiosk was crushed under the deluge of masonry, along with multiple cars and part of a house. Although being a sudden self-dismantling, some people did manage to escape the collapse, including a customer of the kiosk. However, 4 people would be lost to the destruction of the tower, but this wasn't known immediately. First responders reached the site and rescue works began, as noted in a contemporary LA Times article. Local firemen and police, aided by civilian volunteers, Italian army specialists, and sniffer dogs trained for earthquakes, searched for victims through 30-foot-high mounds of rubble. The streets around the piazza were typical of an ancient city, tight and unfriendly to heavier vehicles. In times of calm, this offered a quaint and timeless atmosphere, but these very same characteristics proved a nightmare for search and rescue heavy lifting cranes. As the day wore on into night, the death toll was realised. Sadly, among the dead was the kiosk worker. She apparently had been trying to call authorities to notify them of the first falling bricks. In addition to the dead, 15 would be injured in varying states of degree. The tower would not be rebuilt. Instead, for some 8,000 cubic metres, or 280,000 cubic feet of brick, sand and granite rubble would be cleaned up and disposed of, leaving just a stump of the building and a plaque honouring the victims. But how did it fall after the best part of a millennium through countless invasions, sackings and general Italian city goings on? Well, that's what everyone wanted to find out. City officials claimed that they hadn't had any clue the tower was on the brink of collapse. True, pre-disaster cracks had appeared on the outside of the building over the centuries, but it had not caused too much concern. Cracks were pretty common on ancient buildings. Hell, they're even common on new buildings. The cause. Investigators tasked with finding the cause began by looking for any paperwork regarding the tower's construction in the city's archives. The tower's geometry was reconstructed, and testing of the mortar used was undertaken. As the clean-up works scurried on, investigators would take around 100 large blocks for testing. But investigators couldn't find a definitive answer. A thing called creep was posited. This was caused by the sheer mass weight of the building being moved by ground settlements and wind. The theory was that during each cycle of loading and unloading of stress from wind, the masonry of the building would move and gradually deform, which after a period of time would result in a loss of structural strength and ultimately failure. But this was not the only theory for failure. Moisture may have also played a part. Some 800 years of humidification and dehumidification created shrinkage within the mortar, which again possibly caused creep and ultimate failure. The stairwell wasn't much help either, essentially filling out the walls unevenly through the height of the structure. This, and in addition to being in the middle of an ever-increasingly busy city, where vehicular traffic generally was getting heavier and heavier, the building was likely to have been weakened. I mean, it was built during a time where foot traffic and horses were the transport of the day. By the late 1980s, lorries, vans, cars and buses had replaced them, trundling across the small city streets. The lack of a definitive answer to the failure is not really massively surprising, as it was likely a combination of all of the theories, plus the best part of 1,000 years of just existing, being extended, modified, and largely taken for granted. The disaster would push for better monitoring of similar vintage buildings across Europe. As well, the continent has a lot of old, pilfered Roman stone buildings, littered across some of the most picturesque and historic cities across the continent. So that's my video on a Pavia tower collapse. It's going to be a 3 on my scale, and this is what I've got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. This is a Plainly Thought production. All videos on the channel Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike License. Plainly Thought videos produced by me, John, in a currently very loud fireworky corner of Southern London, UK. And all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and Mr. Music, can you play us out, please?